Hey, everybody. We're here with Jack and Lynn, and we've got a guest podcast episode from family. It's the exact kind of stuff I want to have on here. And since Chip Judd's mental health and mission of the church podcast, since he does that, and it's the kind of content that we'd want to have on here, we're airing it. And there's a part 2 of this conversation on Chip's YouTube. We'll give that in the show notes. But today, you'll be hearing me and Chip talk to Pastor Chip Henderson and his wife, Christy Henderson. So they were pastoring a large church. They were mentally very unhealthy, weren't doing ministry in a sustainable way, and were going bad places quickly. And they tell their story of a wake-up call and restoration. That's what people will hear today. And if you want to hear a part 2 on Chip's podcast, they talk about how they now do life and ministry with a healthier framework. And we're talking some serious stuff went down, and it really bolsters your faith in just the church. I think, quite frankly, because it's a mega church, and you see a lot of mega church pastors that are living unhealthy lifestyles, unsustainable. And but one thing I wanted to ask you guys before we let people hear that conversation. So Pastor Chip and Pastor Greg have both talked about the many pastors that they talked to at the retreat on Church Creek. Mm-hmm. And both of them, if you ask them, hey, do we have a pastor problem? In other words, most pastors are, you hear all the horror stories. Are most pastors just predatory? Are they in it for the wrong reasons? Both of them would be like, we see tons of pastors, and that is by far not the norm. Pastor Greg for sure would say, no, we do not have a pastor problem. Obviously, one predatory pastor is one too many, but as a whole, he doesn't see that group as a tainted bunch. And he has said on this podcast, Lynn, you were there, that he has seen predatory pastors come through the retreat at Church Creek, but is very, very few. My question to you guys, though, is when it comes to celebrity pastors, would you say there's an issue with that bunch? And what I mean by that is, as a whole, when you look at the bigger names in the last 20 years, the ones who were leading churches of tens of thousands, writing books, there's some really messed up stuff. I mean, really messed up predatory behaviors. I'd say a lot of them probably were just the product of things that the three of us could do, as far as wearing ourselves too thin and acquiring some bad habits. But there's been a lot of very shady, manipulative, taking advantage of other people sort of behaviors with tons of celebrity pastors. So do y'all think that there's an issue with celebrity pastors? And I know neither one of y'all like to make, blanket label statements, but we're just kind of navigating the waters a little bit. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think it's actually probably helpful if you change the question a bit. Like, would you say that we have a problem in this country with celebrities? Do celebrities have problems? It's like, oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. It's almost like a cliche, right? It's like how many celebrities have, healthy marriages or healthy personal lives, healthy career trajectories? Like, how many of them have really good mental health? It's like everyone knows that to be a celebrity is almost to basically accept the fact that you're simultaneously probably going to wreck your life. So it's I think when we say, oh, celebrity pastor, it's easy to either become really defensive and say, like, no, like, get kind of protective of the church and be like, no, there's no problem. It's just a few bad apples or whatever. Or be like, all celebrity pastors are bad. The whole concept is evil. And I think it's like, celebrity itself creates so many problems that no one is immune to, and that are very, very, very difficult, almost impossible to grapple with. And so, just normal celebrity does that to people. Why would pastors be exempt from that?
Mm-hmm.
And, being a pastor and being a celebrity, or being a pastor and being surrounded by celebrities, it probably, heightens some of those things. And in terms of like the predatory stuff, it's like, look, I do think that, leading an organization like a large church is going to appeal to people who are charismatic and manipulative. That's just an environment that would appeal to them. And so the fact that, as Pastor Greg and Chip say, we tend to, in the church world, by and large in their experience, which I would absolutely defer to, the vast majority of pastors are not that, I think is a really good testament to how God takes care of his church, and to the health of most churches. Because again, if you are a charismatic, predatory person, a church is actually a really attractive place to land.
Yeah.
And so, with do we have a problem with celebrity pastors? It's like, in a sense, like, yeah, of course we do, because celebrity is such a corrosive thing for anybody who has to deal with it.
Yeah.
Whether they wanted it or not.
And it seems like what we'll do then with what you just said is we would say, oh, so a pastor has no business being a celebrity. That's not something they can control.
No, that's what I was about to say. It's like some of these guys didn't ask for that. And you can hear some of them who have blown their lives up. I remember listening to one in particular say, like, I didn't know how to get out of this. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was trapped. I didn't know how to. Now, you're like, oh, he was lying. It's like, well, maybe, but it's like, or maybe that's just the deal is, you have guys who never planned for this. Like I think about Seacoast, and, Pastor Josh and Greg are certainly not celebrity pastors, but they are, Pastor Greg is someone for whom a megachurch was never the plan.
Yeah.
This was not something he tried to do. And suddenly, he and Josh find themselves in the position, Greg and then now Josh, of leading a church like Seacoast. And so the idea that, like, yeah, of course there can be guys who suddenly find themselves in a position that they didn't expect to be in, didn't try to be in, maybe early on had no interest in being in. I really do think that the number of people who get into church explicitly to be manipulative and predatory is extremely small. Extremely small. If only because, yes, it's an attractive place to do, like I said, but like there are other places to do that that's probably going to get you, more money and influence if that's what you want.
Yeah.
So I think, honestly, a lot of, celebrity pastors end up there unexpectedly, to themselves at least.
What are you thinking?
Yeah, I don't have much to contribute.
Yeah. Yeah, I am curious whether, because I've changed in this area, but when it comes to Christian leaders, pastors, ministry workers being predatory or misbehaving in deeply profound ways, do you have a harder time humanizing them than someone who's just a CEO of a company or someone who's, making tons of money as a lawyer? Like, is it harder as Christians when you see, whoa, it's supposed to be one of us. They're supposed to be carrying out the gospel. I know they're not perfect, but man, that was predatory. That was taking advantage of someone else. Do you have a harder time humanizing?
Well, I think it depends on, like, even using the word predatory means that it questions they're not one of us. So in that sense, I think we give them the same view that we give the world, which is you're living in darkness. But if it's someone who is standing by the fact that they believe and they're following Jesus, but you don't see signs of repentance, then it's like, just be honest about what's going on. But then if you see them make a mistake and you see repentance and and we don't often see the end of the story. So these pastors that we don't know, we're not a part of their restoration. We're not a part of what's happening. We just see what happens in the news. And then we don't hear from them again. because we're not a part of their lives, so we don't know how the story ends. I think if we saw how the story ended or where they're at now, I think I would be able to give them just as much compassion if I saw like, hey, they did make a mistake, but then that is also the point of the cross, is that you fall short and you can come on the other side of it. But if there's somebody who is predatory, then it questions if they ever were. They weren't one of us, you know? So I think I would hold them to the same standard as the world.
Yeah. I do think for the record, I do think it's worse to be a wolf in sheep's clothing in the church, causing these little ones to stumble. We've read you'd be better off, basically drowning.
Yeah.
I mean, so I do think it's worse, but as I get older, it's just like, I can humanize pastors that make bad mistakes. I just see there's a problem with evil in every single one of us. We're all susceptible to it. We're one decision away from making a very bad mistake, and then one mistake leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. Next thing you know, we're doing something we could never have even possibly imagined. It's just what happens to people when they're not careful. And so I don't have a harder time with pastors like I used to in my more cynical days.
I guess one difference, I tend to be pretty hard. I tend to be pretty hard and harder on pastors, but also because I am one and I'm pretty hard on myself. And so I do think one difference, though, and this is a thing that I think this is an aspect about how we handle things in the church that I do not like. And I'm not saying I have an answer for it, is what happens afterwards. Because I think there are ways where, a pastor falls or they're removed. I think that, it's important that they be restored to fellowship in the church. I don't think it's important at all that they be restored to the position of pastor.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you're, in the investment world or in the business world and you defraud people and you're caught and convicted, part of the judgment might be that you don't get to do this sort of thing anymore. Like you're never allowed again. Like I think it was Elizabeth Holmes.
Or a lawyer losing their license.
Well, right. Or I think Elizabeth Holmes with Theranos, right? The blood testing company that was like completely fraudulent. Like she's prohibited from a number of activities, like forever. And I think it's like she can never operate a lab. She can there are things she's prohibited from doing. And I mean, my view is, look, depending on what it is, if you do the equivalent of like defrauding your church, and I'm not talking about like you ran your life into the ground and you had a one night stand and it's awful and you confess and you repent. Like there are different degrees, but like I do think that there should be cases where it's like, hey, look, you don't ever get to be a pastor again. You just don't. And I think one of the problems is like there's just no enforcement mechanism for that. And so it's like I have a lot more sympathy for guys who wreck their lives and just try to live out their life quietly than I do for guys who are like, well, look, what's the acceptable amount of time before I can go found a new church?
Mm.
Yeah.
It's not fair or right of me, but like I have a lot of anger towards that sort of thing where, and I don't know their hearts, but it really does seem to me like it's like what is the acceptable amount of time after I blew up my life to where I can plant a new church?
Mm. And I think it's how we hold the word calling. And there's all sorts of ways of approaching whether or not someone has a supernatural calling for specific points of ministry. I think we would all agree in some way, shape, or form. But I think what happens is people say, well, he had a calling on his or her life. Satan trapped him, or trials of life. We're not going to let the enemy win. We got to get him back. That I'm not saying I agree with that. I think that's the mentality is we're not going to let Satan win this one. We got to restore him so he can be back up there ministering to people because he has a calling on his life.
Yeah, and I think the way we think about calling is completely made up and fake.
Explain, and then we got a jet.
The calling that we all share is to be obedient to Christ. It's like to do justly, love mercy, and to walk humbly with the Lord your God. That's the calling we all have. Not everyone has the same kind of calling that Paul had. Not everyone has a calling of that kind. And that's one thing I think. But secondly, let's say you do have a calling. I think you can forfeit it. And I think the idea that, well, I've still got a calling, it's like, now it's just a get out of jail free card. Where can anything cause you to forfeit your calling? Anything at all? And if the answer is yes, well then we need to have a real serious talk about what that looks like. And if the answer is no, then I think that reveals if literally nothing that you do can cause you, and by forfeit I don't mean that calling isn't on your life. I mean that you lose your ability to live into it forever. And I do think that's a thing. If there's literally nothing you can do that could disqualify you from leading a church, then I think that really makes the whole concept of that particular concept of calling really calls it into question. Because like that is so completely foreign, I think, to the New Testament and the way that they talk about like the qualifications for elders and the way Paul talks about church, or the way that Jesus talks about discipline within the body, or the way Paul talks about guys who are like, hey, they're with me, now he's working in opposition to me. It's like, I'm turning him over to Satan and we'll see what happens. Or the way that Paul talks even about communion, where it's like, hey, some of you guys in Corinthians, some of you guys have been taking communion unworthily and you've died. So, like the way that we think about calling is, I think sometimes where, God is just this very kindly grandpa who's willing to kind of poo-poo away.
Grandpa God, I like that.
And so I know exactly the mindset you're talking about, but I just think it is far better, and also I think far more spiritually potent to live a quiet life of anonymous repentance than to seek. And I also think that like the act of seeking of leadership after completely blowing up your life is a sign that you should not have it. That's just me. But I just think that the way we talk about this really like sometimes reveals like this, we don't think about this seriously, like what this stuff means. Anyway, I'm just
on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you agree?
Oh, I would say it's 10. Highly agree.
Yeah.
10.
10. Boom. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'd say I agree too. All right. You're going to be encouraged by this conversation. I'm telling you, it's a good one. It's Pastor Chip Judd, our very own, and myself talking to Pastor Chip Henderson and his wife, Christy Henderson. Hope you guys enjoy. Good talking to y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Hey, everybody. Chip Judd here with some really, really good friends. Sorry, but Joey's with us again. I know some of you let me know that just throws you off when Joey's here.
Hey, last episode we did when you were introducing the guest, you said really, 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 and then you gave these guys 2 reallys. I'm just pointing that out.
All right. Well,
I'm wounded.
It's an award kind of system. But seriously, this is the Mental Health and Mission of the Church podcast. I'm Chip Judd, and got some really, really cool guests that we've known each other. Gosh, what would you say, Chip? About 10 years now, or
yeah,
more?
at least maybe a little more, Chip. It maybe even 15, but somewhere in that range.
I'm at an age where, dude, time just is weird. It's weird. Yeah. Well, this is Chip and Christy Henderson, and they pastor Pine Lake Church in the Jackson, Mississippi area, and they've got a really cool story they're going to share with us, and I hope you find it encouraging, informative, challenging, and
is it
we're just looking forward to it.
Tiny little church?
Pardon me?
Is it a tiny little church?
Oh, yeah. What do you got, about 150 people?
Something like that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. No, it's actually quite large. We don't throw around numbers because we don't want to be all about that, but it is a really large, regionally impactful, and even beyond that. And and in the circles Chip moves in, and Christy, they would be influencers for sure. And we just want them to influence you today. So bless you, Chip and Christy. Really good to see you, first of all. And we really want you to tell a story. Obviously, it's a story that fits in with our purpose, our agenda, what we feel like is our mission, which is bringing mental health and the awareness of it, sensitivity to it, handling of it in partnership with the church's mission to make healthy, risk-taking, world-changing, intimacy-enjoying followers of Jesus. And I know that's what you're all about. And I believe your story is going to really help people see that connection. Sidebar, Joey, your mic's a little low, I think. At least it was to me. Chip and Christy, did he sound... Joey edits this, so don't worry if we have to...
Check.
I hear you, Joe. I think
I'd go up a little bit louder, a little bit more.
I've got the gain all the way up, so I'm not going to be able to.
All right. Well, then it's fine, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chip and Christy, anything you want to say about yourselves, do that. But then share... what was that chuckle about?
No, nothing necessarily. I would say, Chip, man, when we encountered you, 10, 15 years ago, like you say, man, I can't remember either. I'm at the point where years just turn into I don't even know what. Man, I honestly would say to you, Christy and I were talking about it just before we got on the podcast, to say, she remembered vividly a conversation she had with you where she said, hey, we're not okay. Our church is not okay. Our staff's not okay. And so she could see it, and we'll get into that. But I got to be honest, I was clueless to really what your heart was. And so really since then is really when I would say our journey really began in earnest. And so I hope and pray that, man, if there are, people out there who'd be listening, sometimes you don't know what you don't know until God knocks you upside the head and you start to see it.
So how did y'all make the connection? Did y'all just hear about Chip and reached out?
I think we had connection. My initial connection was with a guy named Mac Lake. This was a long, long time ago. We'd gotten connected through Leadership Network with Seacoast. So that was back when Jeff was still there, Surratt, or Greg, I think maybe. But anyway, we got connected church-wise then, and I think Mac may have been the connector because there was something stirring in our church a long, long time ago. Again, clueless. We'll get into it, I know. Clueless, but I think Chip was a step in the direction toward the idea of inner healing, things like that. We were using words we had no idea what they meant. And now you look back and go, wow, that's it. That's it.
Yeah. And Chip, was this one of the churches that you actually traveled to and met with the staff, met with Chip and Christy, and did kind of your consulting deal?
Yeah. I think it started with a marriage weekend.
Yeah, you did a marriage retreat. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have conversation, and one thing leads to another. And
that's true.
Let me make a note here for anybody listening. We're going to do a second episode. Today's going to be about their personal story, but we're going to do a second episode about how all of this has affected them as leaders in the sense of how they wake up in the morning, how they see themselves, how they see God, how they embrace the call and assignment that's on their life, but also how they live it out, the kind of culture they're trying to build now, how it's affected their vision, their strategies, their structures and systems. And in essence, and this is why I'm so excited, it's the beautiful mix of a heightened mental health awareness and understanding and application mixed with applying that to the mission they feel called to, pastoring a church. And I'm just stoked, man. I'm stoked for today, and I'm stoked for that episode that I think we're going to do tomorrow. And I really, Chip and Christy both. I just appreciate the heck out of you guys, and appreciate. You know what? I want to say this. I just appreciate the friendship over the years. We don't connect a lot, but it's one of those relationships that when you do, it feels like you just saw each other last week. And I love that. That's what my ministry's. I've never wanted to be like a traveling speaker guy. I wanted to be a guy who comes in and builds relationship, friendship, and there's money exchanged and all that. I mean, I got to make a living, but it's just so much more than that. And I love it. I love it. I love it.
Well, look,
Christy,
we would
what
pay
are
you
you
to be our
thinking over
friend.
there? That's right. I'm a paid friend.
You're a paid friend, Chip. Thank you.
And by the way, the rent's going up, man. The rent.
I hear you.
And just
Christy,
a quick
what are you
ad,
thinking?
if
You got
if
anything
you
to
would
say?
like Chip to be your friend and you're listening right now, we've got a link for you in the show notes that you can be Chip's friend. And the prices are out there. I'm totally kidding if you are hearing this.
Yeah. I'm not worth it, by the way. Whatever it costs, I'm not worth it. The friendship cost. Christy, what are you thinking as we get going here?
You know what? I just have so much gratitude, really, for you, Chip.
Yeah.
And like I said, just, the Lord was working way upstream for us by putting you in our life. And I know that goes with a lot of work on your part. And by work, I mean like inner work for your own personal self and your own family. And so, I don't know, I'm just sitting here kind of surreal moment and with a lot of gratitude. So thank you.
Well, interestingly, you wouldn't, maybe we'll do it in another conversation, but it's very timely for you to say something like that. Post my surgery and all, it's kind of like rebooting my life, yet with a renewed sense of the clock that's running. And feeling a little bit, I've been out of circulation for almost 2 years. And, feeling a little bit like, do I have anything left to give? So that was really, really sweetly impactful. Appreciate it.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, Joey, I'm sorry, Chip.
No, I was just saying the same, Chip. And your life has been impactful on us, and we are forever grateful, man. Thank you.
Well, that's all I've ever wanted. Joey, why don't you push us off in the story? I don't know if you have a way you want to lean, or just say, have at it.
Well, I don't know anything about your story other than a very general basic, and I just wanted to briefly share that I've had an extensive background with mental illness stemming from childhood, dealt with depression and anxiety for most of my adult life, and then in 2019 it was a full-blown mental health crisis. Ended up in the hospital for a week, and I was pastoring one of the Seacoast campuses at the time. And Chip's been by my side, for I think 13, 14 years. So he was obviously very instrumental during that season. And I will say that thank the Lord, situationally, my life has continued to get harder and harder. But since that mental health crisis, I think I could say that the physiological depression has pretty much dissipated, which is just, I never thought I'd be able to say that. Whereas the anxiety piece is something that I still have to, navigate and figure out. But usually when I'm really sad, I could say this is situational. This would make anybody sad. But I think that overlaps so much as far as situational and physiological. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but it feels like the depression side of things is something in my past. And man, it was a 30-year hellish run, though, for sure. Just ups and downs and all of that. So whatever the story is, I'm sure that I can relate to a good bit.
Yeah.
And again, just to throw a teaching moment in there, Joey's battles with depression and anxiety are generational. Very clearly, father dealt with the same stuff. He's recently passed away, actually. And so, that's some of the stuff that we want to awaken the church to, that there's a lot of dynamics to mental health and spiritual health. And Well, Chip and Christy, why don't you? I'm sure you've thought about it some, and I'm sure you've told your story before.
Yeah.
Why don't you jump in there and just start telling your story, and we may interrupt you occasionally for.
I'll go first. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just said, can I go first? Just because everything that you just described about your journey, so resonates with mine. And, so yeah, I mean, I guess my mental health journey goes back to birth, and even before, that, and the generational piece to that, is part of that as well. So just grew up in a really, I would say as in a fear based, environment. And,
Me too.
so
Me too.
yeah, totally. And, your nervous system is being developed and, formed, in those first, 0 to 3, I mean, primarily. And then beyond that, it's just like stacked on top of that. That's kind of the foundation. And so, even at birth, just looking back through therapy at what was going on, in my home, at the time of my birth. And that informs a lot about how my nervous system, my emotions, everything about me, was touched by that. And so it makes sense. And there's a lot of compassion that I have for the people that were in my life then, my family of origin, my father in particular, just with his, battle with brokenness and his, battle with depression and self-medicating and, just all of the dysfunction, there. And so, I'm the 5th of 5 children, and I have a twin brother. And so a lot of that, plays a part also just in my core beliefs that I've had to address. And that was, just a feeling of insignificance or being pushed aside or not important. And I have 3 older sisters. The youngest was 9 at the time of my birth, and then, my brother, my twin, is a guy, and my dad, so longed to have a son, and so, once he was born, and the story was told over and over. I mean, obviously, I couldn't remember, explicitly the memory, but the story was always, hey, go tell Vince that he's got a boy now, and we don't care what the other one is. And so that was just like, it really defined something in me, and especially the fact that they would tell the story over and over and over again. And so just the chaos that was going on, in the family, in the room, with my parents' dysfunctional, relationships outside of their marriage, and, just, a lot of walking on eggshells as I grew up in the Catholic Church, where, great, amazing things about the church. But in particular, my experience was, fear also, just not getting it right, like forced to go and even going to confession. You got to go to confession. And I didn't know what to confess. So I made stuff up. So I'd try to get it right. But just that constant, feeling of, I'm not good enough. Like, I can't get this right. And, going to church and then going home, and the, incongruency of that experience as well. Just like, what in the world, who is God and how does he see me? And it just affected every part of my life.
Christy, real quick. So that was what was told when your brother was born. Those words were uttered, and then you're saying for the rest of your life, when people told the story of y'all's birth, they said, "Yeah, when your brother was born, we basically said it's a boy, and we don't care." That's the story that was retold, and you
over
heard
and
that
over
as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I grew up Catholic too, so I'm like, is this my sister over, like a soul sister over here? I grew up Catholic, and I made stuff up for confession also.
Are you serious? Oh my gosh! Yeah.
I didn't ever have to make anything up. I wasn't raised Catholic, but
Hey.
I wouldn't have had to make anything up.
Yeah. Well, that was part of I was just a sweet little girl. I was just a innocent child, and thrown into the mix of lots of pressure and dysfunction and trying to perform and not ever feeling like I'm going to get it right. And so my depression started, my first, I guess, memory, like true explicit memory of being depressed, was at 7 years old, and just riding down the road in my dad's truck going, this is it. Like, nothing's going to change. And that's, I guess the definition of depression is just that hopelessness and the overwhelming sense of nothing's going to change. This is my life.
7 years old.
Yeah. And I needed help. I didn't have language for that. And I didn't have a safe place to process any of that. I couldn't, there was nobody to go to. And, even in my family, it was just, that was the nature of our family. You just didn't talk about how you felt. Otherwise you'd kind of be in trouble for that. So that was another traumatic, marker, just a constant sense of fear without being able to process. So,
and you weren't thinking this, something that Chip reminded me of when I was in my mental health crisis is, Joey, you got to remember this is something happening to you. And at 7 years old, you weren't thinking, oh, I'm struggling with something that's upon me. You're just thinking, I'm sad and this is all life is going to offer. Like, this sucks.
Yeah.
7 years old, I just can't imagine that. Like I can trace mine back to middle school, and I think of years before middle school way more fondly because I'm like, wow, my childhood. I remember just how carefree and happy I was, and that kind of ended in middle school. I cannot imagine 7 years old. I know it's been a long time, but gosh, I'm so sorry. Wow.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a lot of fear just growing up too. I mean, like at night you would be scared, and what that was like.
Yeah, he knows all my story and just the kindness that he has shown to me. As we learn to tell our story, it's helpful to know that people know you in that way. And it was a lot of fear. There was a sensitivity I feel like that God gave me in design for spiritual things, even, and the feeling and the sensing of there's darkness here, like a tangible darkness in my home. And to have to face that or hide from that, and try to be safe from that was just, it was overwhelming. And I can remember like yesterday, the presence of that in my home down the hallway, trying to get through the hallway at night in my fear. And then my mom just saying, there's nothing to be afraid of. Go get back in your bed. And, you just, I don't know, you need care and you don't get it. And then things get stuck. And so that was the beginning of a lifelong battle of depression, and then the anxiety that kind of went along with that. Mm-hmm.
So I would assume, and again, I don't know this part of the story, but I would assume from then till, I don't know, maybe even into your marriage with Chip. But when would you say you started to see light at the end of the tunnel? In other words, start to receive some help, some understanding.
Yeah.
When did you even have words for it? Like, when did that happen? When you're like, oh, this is something I'm dealing with.
Yeah, I guess it was pretty early on in our marriage that I started, just trying to figure out, not really being able to figure out, but going, God, something is wrong with me. And it felt a lot like failure on my part, like I'm flawed, I'm whatever. And so there was a lot of shame around that. But as far as a light at the end of the tunnel, I would have pockets of time, just with the Lord or circumstantial stuff that would kind of bring me back up out of, the depths of depression. And so I did seek out help probably after we moved here. that was my first time to sit with a counselor and just, which was helpful. And it was not enough. Like it was more like, hey, let's try to look at life differently. Let's think about the positive things, in life. But there was never that deep level of healing, that happened. So there were bright spots and like, okay, maybe the clouds are going to part, but then it would kind of go back into that, undercurrent.
So the timing issue, you 7 years old, and what you're saying is you really didn't start pursuing help until several years into your marriage. How old were you when you got married?
I was 18.
Wow.
Barely 18. Yeah. So part of it.
Mary and Chip probably increased the fear. You were probably like, wow, what have I done?
Right. Yeah, there was that moment, Chip. There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, honestly, God brought him into my life, and that was one of the
of course,
the brightest seasons of my life was in my teenage years when we were dating, because it was fun and like passionate and it took my mind off of all of my pain for a long time.
How old were you when you met?
Oh my gosh, this is going to get back into the scandal of pastor dating the kid and the you can tell.
No, I'm 5 years older than Christy, so I served when I was in college, went back to serve a church in her community. We were both actually born in that community. We were both born in the same hospital in a little small town in Mississippi. But I think Christy was probably 15, 16 years old when we met. I think we started dating. I took her out on her 16th birthday.
Wow.
And so we dated for a couple of years. She went to college, and I proposed to her on her first day of college.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's it. And so the scandalous part, and Joey, you don't necessarily have to cut that part out, but again, small town. Christy was not technically in my youth group. She's Catholic. I was at a Baptist church, but certainly she was a part of and friends around. Her friends were a part, and so that was back in the day, just where we were, is the place you found yourself, and you look back and you wonder what were her parents thinking, because there was it was fully out there in the open, above board, and they're like blessing that, but there was just a lot that you look back on and go, wow, just wow.
Yeah. Chip, when did you first have the thought, there's something, you might not use the word wrong, but you know what I'm trying to say? When did you first my wife doesn't bounce back, or I don't know, something? What was your first clue that you got something going on here?
Honestly, Chip, I was so clueless. Okay, so clueless, and no framework. And I'll get into my story in a little bit, but no framework for depression, no framework for sadness and stuff like that. I think in seminary. So whenever we got married, Christy came to seminary where I was after her first semester of college, I guess. And there was tension because, I would go to class, and after class, man, I'm ready to go to the gym. I'm ready to go, work out and do stuff. And Christy was at home with nobody. She wasn't working yet. And she's waiting on me to come through the door so we can be together. And I'm trying to get out of here. And she's like, no, stay here. And so that was probably one of the first places where I'm like, there's tension there. And so, you learn ways to cope with that. But it was not healthy. But, that's probably the first time that I would say, it's like, hey, I wonder why, again, please hear in my mind back then, I'm not saying now, why is she so needy? That would have been my mindset. And so I'm an avoidant. And so we'll get into that a little bit at some point. And so whenever things start to come at me, I'm like, I got to get away. And so it just pushed me away, which only touched her, what we now know is ambivalence. She wants me even more now at times. And so it just was, when I tell you, it was a nasty mix of soup for our lives to come together. It's why we were attracted to each other, because we were so opposite. And I think it's in God's design, and God, in some ways, wants us to be strengthened by each other's strengths and weaknesses that attract us to each other. But once you get married, it's like the enemy takes those strengths, those differences, and makes it a wedge to try to push you apart. And for a long time, I thought, man, she's not really for me. She doesn't really, she's not really on my side. And now I know differently. But that was probably the first time, Chip, when we were in seminary. Then I would fast forward to after the birth of our last child, our son Reagan, who's now 23 years old, coming up on, I think.
Wow.
She got officially diagnosed with postpartum depression. And my sense is once a doctor told her you have depression, it's like, man, what hit the fan. I mean, it just all started coming out. And so that was, I think, the first time that those words were spoken. And I got to be honest, I was a terrible husband.
Not completely.
Well, I'm just saying I didn't understand depression. I mean, this is how broken I was. I'm like, what do you got to be depressed about? I mean, you're married to me.
That's right.
That's literally
right.
what I'm thinking. So
you won the lottery, man. What are you talking about?
I'm saying our kids are healthy. Our church is, thriving. It's growing, whatever. All these external markers that you would look at and go, hey, why would you even be depressed? But not understanding the wounds of a soul. And again, I had no place for that. And so for a season, I didn't understand it. I'm like, well, cheer up. I got to go to work. And I would go to work because that's where I was getting affirmation, which is part of my brokenness. And then, there came time where I resented the depression because it was ruining our sex life. It was ruining our, we couldn't plan things, we couldn't do things at times. And again, that's not always, but I'm just saying there were moments when that would be true. Yeah. And Christy's trying to, she's trying to serve and bless me, but I'm not understanding it. And then there have been other iterations of, when I tried to serve her in her depression, but it was from a good place, I would say that, but it was still me trying to serve her because she is what we've said, she's the identified patient. She's got issues. So let me serve her like a good, pastor would. And there was some goodness in that, but it wasn't, Chip, until I began to see my own brokenness that I could actually embrace her for where she was, how she was, and really us start to heal together.
All right, when you say that, and I thank you for sharing all that, because I knew if I said, I knew you'd get there, because most husbands or wives, depending on which piece of the puzzle you are, just don't know what to do with it. They've not experienced it. So, and unfortunately we tend to give these cliche bumper sticker answers. Well, just do this kind of thing. Yeah. So a minute ago you said it wasn't until I kind of started to recognize my own issues.
Yeah.
Play with that a little bit. What did you start to realize about yourself, and how did that give you more compassion for Christy?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say in that season, what you just said, Chip, spot on. In that kind of that third season of, hey man, I'm just going to serve her, I'm going to soldier on here. And God had given me a word, legitimately, God gave me a word. He was going to heal Christy. But I had no concept of what that meant, or even for me. So I had a list of things that when she starts to spiral, I'm going to do these 5 things. And so, but it was the list. It was what you do. When we were in 2019, Joey, amazing that you said in 2019 is when your moment happened. 2019 was a pivotal time for us. August of 2019 is where we really hit a dark night of the soul, the wall, whatever you want to call it. Life's got to change. And Christy wound up going to the Houston Medical Center for a week, and that was very helpful. And then a little over a month of intensive outpatient therapy in California. And we told our staff this whole story yesterday, so it's kind of fresh on our minds. Yeah. But when she was in California, I was there, and I was invited into one of the sessions. And she'd been there probably a week or so since then, and going every day, 8 hours a day. And the therapist started asking me questions. And I'm like, this is weird. She's asking me questions. Christy's the patient here. And after several minutes of asking me questions, she asked me if I'd ever heard the word narcissism. And I freaking blew up. I looked at Christy like, what have you been telling these people?
Like literally?
Yeah, like literally just said, hey, man, I don't know what you've been telling him. Hey, I ain't here for this. This ain't about me, that kind of stuff. So I know now what that is. But that was a moment, Chip, where it was a place where I at least honestly was willing to look at myself and go, okay, what if there is crap in my life that I have buried? I have worked like a champ to keep you at arm's length away from it. I put up this protective barrier. Ain't nobody getting in. Our marriage journey now, we would say it's Genesis 2:25. Adam and Eve were both naked and not ashamed.
That's the
goal.
Woo.
That's what we want to be. But I can tell you, I was covered and hiding like a boss.
Yeah. All right. Now, you didn't realize all that in 2 minutes.
No, I did not.
But what happened in that moment when they started to poke you? What happened?
Yeah.
You got angry.
It was rising up in me. Okay. So now, again, I believe God's work for me. God works upstream. We had met you. We had been hearing about inner healing. A guy named Mike Plunkett had talked about emotional healing, and man, I liked that. I'd read a book by Rusty Rustenbach on listening and inner healing prayer. So it was in my orbit, but I never really thought I have broken places. But something happened then where I feel like, honestly, the Holy Spirit said, what if she's right? What if she's right? And so I wrote down, somehow I went back and I wrote down what the lady said about narcissism. And God began to, it's just like the Spirit was beginning to say, hey, you can see yourself in that. And again, this is not necessarily that big a deal, but I don't believe I am a full-blown narcissistic, narcissism pathological, but I believe everybody's on the scale, and I was way further towards that end than I wanted to admit. And so that's when I began to look at my life, and Chip, that's when I became not just more compassionate toward Christy, but I had to be compassionate toward myself. And I had to be compassionate toward my parents. And had to let God shepherd the little boy that got wounded and broken inside of me that was hiding behind success, accomplishment, looks, achievement, affirmation of other people, all these things that I was getting, legitimate needs met from illegitimate places. And couldn't see my wife for what she really was and couldn't empathize with her in that place. So I don't know if that answers what you were asking.
And let me take another side trip for a second. Listen, man, if you're a leader listening right now, and everybody's a leader, meaning everyone's influencing someone in some way, and leadership is influence. Here's the deal. But I do mean if you're a leader, like a church leader, pastor, listen to what Chip's saying. Listen. You may not have a wife who deals with depression. You may not have a husband who deals with it. You may not have a kid or whatever. But here's the deal. You do have issues that ping off of other people's issues and make you ineffective at connecting and resourcing one another the way God intends for you to. Here's the deal, man. Every breakthrough you want starts with you. Every breakthrough you want starts with you. The greatest hindrances to you enjoying the future God wants you to enjoy, the greatest hindrances between you and the future God wants you to have are inside of you, not outside.
Yeah.
They're inside, not outside. And again, we don't want to get all weird about Chip's place in ministry, but I mean, this couple here is leading a large church, and while they were building it, these things were going on. And as they continue their story, you're going to see how that continued. In fact, God continued to bless. But the base from which they operate, which is their marriage and their family and their own personal journey, changed dramatically. Yeah. And I guess you can correct me, but I'll bet they're enjoying their days like they never thought it was possible to enjoy.
Yeah. Chip, I'm reading right now in my Bible reading plan, starting in Genesis, beginning of the year. I'm reading right now about the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And really God spoke into me yesterday. Just, I've seen it before, but it was just fresh. that, man, these guys were extraordinarily blessed.
Yeah.
Extremely blessed. God is promising to bless them. And they were extremely broken at the same time.
Yeah.
And so we tend to say either you're blessed or you're broken. But what I'm saying, to what my experience is, and what I would say to anybody who's listening, is you can actually be extremely blessed and have extremely broken places at the same time. But if you don't deal with those broken places, they can ruin the blessing.
Absolutely.
Chip, what you just said to these guys is, it's crazy how apparent it is that Chip was able to be a more understanding husband and kind of move their marriage in the right direction by being more empathetic to his wife once he realized he's got stuff he's got to deal with. That's crazy, what you said, and then just having heard what they shared. That's something else. I want to connect some dots real quick with Christy. So up until the doctor saying you had postpartum, were you in any sort of regular, whether it was taking medicine or regularly seeing a therapist? Like, were you doing anything proactive on behalf of your mental health?
No. I wasn't. I was just kind of trying to keep my head above water.
Just surviving.
But you did know I'm struggling with depression?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew that, yeah. Even if I didn't say the words, like, I knew that there was something there.
Yeah.
But, and again, just to reiterate the shame that was around that, just to.
Yeah, because we're talking, how many years ago? Because now we're in a day and age where, I mean, mental health, it's
coming up on 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Coming up on 25 years ago. So I think 2002, 2003.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say with the younger generation, there really is no stigma with mental health. Yeah. I mean, there just isn't. I have kids, and it's something that their peers talk about very openly and candidly. But 25 years ago, it's a game changer. I mean, completely different culture in America as far as how we saw mental health and mental illness, for sure.
Yeah. I can remember around that time, I was breaking down, and I can remember sitting on our little front porch and thinking, I gotta go, like, I can't do this anymore. And my sister actually was there with me, and she's like, we need to maybe go somewhere and just to a hospital, and this is just kind of like where I think your mindset was. You looked at her and you're like, she is not going to a hospital. Like, and then there was just nothing beyond that. Like, okay, well, if we're not going to the hospital, then what are we going to do that will, help in this moment? And it's kind of a blur after that. I don't really even know what happened, other than I was hoping, like, to take a step towards some relief. But anyway, that's indicative of, like, where we were, not just as a couple or as a family, but just the times of, if I went to the hospital, what would that look like for him, or, whatever that was.
And for us, and again,
the church.
You look back on it, you're just living out the life that you have and what you've learned in the family of origin, the culture in which you've been brought up in. And so again, I don't understand it. I don't get it. I have no concept of how deep this is and how real and debilitating it is. And so I'm like, nah, I have no place for that in my framework for life and living. And so again, it's part of what I look back on with deep regret and repentance to say, man, forgive me for being so unavailable, inattentive, and unaware of even what she was going through at that time. And I think, in that season, once Reagan, our son, was born, she did get diagnosed with postpartum. And I think that's probably when officially Christy started taking some medication and going to either counseling or psychiatrist, psychologist. I don't remember the soup. You might can say that. But even in that, Chip, that became in itself a part of an issue for us over time. just because what was meant to be helpful ended up from the medicine side, because we didn't know what we didn't know. From a medicine side, it just wound up being a part of what led us to a real crisis in 2019.
Mm-hmm. Explain that. What do you mean the medicine side? What do you led you to the crisis?
Doctors will prescribe anything.
Sure.
They want to help you. They want to bring relief. But I
Right.
think a lot of times doctors, they don't, it's not, there's such our chemistry, our body chemistry, and the way we metabolize, and all of those, like the side effects of some of the medicines that we tried, over the years. My body did not respond well to.
Mm-hmm.
It may have numbed out, the pain a little bit, but it was never really helpful for me. And, fast forward to the crisis of 2019, it had just been a terrible cocktail offered to me of medication, without, now there's DNA testing and all of this stuff that kind of helps what your body can metabolize and be helpful with. But also there was no true, what we've come to understand is like medicine can help support you while you do the work of therapy, but if you don't have the combination of the two, then you're just dependent on a medication to try to help heal you. And it just was not effective for me. And it ended up being a real dangerous situation, as far as the medicine goes. Yeah.
Right.
Listen how stupid this is. Once I knew that I had depression, it was my senior year of college. That's when I had words for it. And for the longest time, I said, I don't need therapy because there's nothing wrong with my thinking. There's just something wrong with my brain. So all I need is medicine. And now, having been the recipient of just such good, rich therapy, I'm like, how did I go so long without? Because you're so right. And I would hear the science that therapy and medicine is just a dynamic duo, when they're complementing each other. And I'm like, well, that's not for me because I think perfectly fine. And now I realize I still don't think perfectly fine. I'm on a journey of getting better and better.
That's right. Well, and that's part of the issue for, I think, church people like me that just didn't know any better. I think I would say with the medicine Christy wound up on, she would say to me at times leading up to 2019, the August the 4th, she would say, something's off. I'm not right. And so the medicine she was on, both highly addictive, so they're intended for short-term use to help you get through a crisis. But like alcohol, the initial high is awesome, but then your body needs more and more of it, and the return is less. So she's on a medicine that was intended for short-term for 7-8 years. And so, so she's got one medicine bringing her down. She's on another medicine trying to bring her up. And so it's this constant yo-yo, and it was an addictive. The medicines she was prescribed were addictive. And it was, man, God gave us a great doctor in Houston that we've become friends with, Christy especially, who was an addiction specialist, neurologist. And he's the one that introduced us to the idea that you don't want to be on anything that's going to be addictive like that, and your body can't metabolize certain medicines. Let's find out the ones that they do. Now, that said, to Christy's point, the medicine is to help you, and it's awesome. You should take it. You should take medicine if that's going to help you. But until you do the deeper work of therapy, and again, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too far, but for guys who may have listened this far, or maybe listening and go, hey man, this is kind of woo-woo, just pray over that thing, slap a Bible verse on it. Here's what I'd say to you. There are two Greek words for healing in the Bible that I'm aware of in the New Testament. One is the Greek word iauma, which means healed in a moment. Jesus can touch you and you can be healed in a moment. But the other Greek word you guys probably know is therapeuo. It's therapy. And just like we would go to physical therapy, if you've got a sciatic nerve problem in your back, just like you may go to have a bone set in your arm and have to do some PT for your shoulder, therapy is not a bad thing. It's actually a gift.
Right.
Our souls get wounded. I'm reading today in Mark 14 where Jesus says to his disciples in the garden, I am troubled, I am distressed, and I am grieving in my soul. That's Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
So you need a therapist, a person who is a good soul doctor to help you, just like a cardiologist for your heart, a neurologist for your brain. A doctor for your soul is called a suke. That's your soul. That's the Greek word, a psychologist. And so we had to get over the stigma of even that,
Yeah.
that now we're going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And again, the hope is that they understand, man, they're going to try to help you with the Holy Spirit to heal, not prescribe you something just to get you through another day. And not everybody, and again, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I'm just saying Christy's spirituality was such that she knew that she wanted the Lord to heal her in the therapy. In the place we went, they weren't all believers, weren't even necessarily believers, but her heart was grounded spiritually. And so
Yeah.
we learned to use the medicine. She began to, I would say, I feel like I'm putting words in your mouth,
Yes.
but the medicine was helping, but she was doing her work toward healing.
Yeah.
Right. Were you going to say something, Christy?
No. I was just listening along. I'm good.
Yeah.
So do you guys see 2019 and the, for lack of better words, aftermath and recovery of it as something currently in 2026 in the rear view, a storm that you guys weathered? Like, are those good words to use? Like, that's something that you guys went through?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah. So when it comes to 2019 and the recovery of it and the aftermath and all of that, do you currently see that time as something in your rear view, like a storm that you weathered? That's something in the past that you got through.
Yeah.
And how did y'all get through it, and how did you get to a place where you're like, oh wow, we're actually aware of what we need to be doing and how we need to be thinking? And obviously we're never going to perfect that, but you guys seem to be in a really good place right now. Like, what was the journey to get to where y'all are at right now?
Yeah, I think it was definitely the wall, like to look back and see it as a storm. Yes. But I think it was a place where the Lord allowed us to, land in that spot, and to know that we have to not just try to get over the wall, but we had to go through the wall in order for us to get to a different place, a different reality, a different way of living. And by necessity, like, we didn't go, oh, okay, I think that we'll go, get some therapy now, or we'll go. It stopped us dead in our tracks. And it was a pivotal moment, and even in that month of gaining tools, that the Lord gave me in order to not just cope with life, but to move through this and to go back into those places that needed, like, I met Jesus in those spaces, in that therapy room, and he was able to speak differently over me, rather than the things that I've had locked in and was having to deal with, as far as thought patterns and everything. And so, after leaving California, I spent, a month out there doing that. I knew I was coming back into an environment that had not done the work, it was still toxic and dysfunctional, and not 100%, but a lot of that was there. And so a lot of what I did at the very end of that was like, okay, Christy, like, we got to prepare ourselves to go back into that. And so it was really like a stopping point, like the wall, let's start going through it. I got covered through a lot of stuff, and then walked into a space that I knew we were about to I just felt like the Lord was going to have to do a work beyond that. And so it has been a journey beyond. So it's not like in the rearview mirror that was, okay, we overcame that, now we're good. It was really the starting point it was a stopping point of what was, and it was a starting point of what is right now. And so there was a lot that had to be addressed. And for us personally, relationally, for him to start his own, deep dive into his own emotional, and I would say mental health journey, because it's your mind, it's your body, and it's your spirit. For him to take that dive too, and then for that to again become something that the Lord would use to change a culture around us.
And I would say, Joey, to that, 2019 was a moment where I think Christy had I would say in biblical terms, of death and resurrection. She went into that season one way and emerged a different person. With a different spirit, heart, and again, in infancy, she's grown through that. I was not there. Again, in 2019, she's the identified patient. That was really where I was aware there were things on my radar, but I was not ready yet to look at myself. My crisis came in 2021 when our elders told me that our staff was in an unacceptable condition. And there's a lot to that. We can talk about it more if you want to. And we had to fix it. But the fix meant I had to look at myself, because I was the leader. I had allowed it. What was the broken things in me that allowed that to happen for so long, where Christy had been for years saying, hey, things are not okay at church. Something's off. People are leaving wounded. This is not good. And I would tell her, again, part of my journey was stay in your lane. You don't understand, that kind of thing. But in that crisis, where it was honestly, it was so in my face that I couldn't avoid it, that I started then to say, I got to get help on me. How did this happen? How did we get here? How did I get here? How did I allow this to happen? And so there was this convergence. Christy and I had started growing together better in 2019, better, but it couldn't actually happen until I looked at my own crap and my own broken heart, and actually had to, step into that. And that was very difficult, to do, but it was clearly God's grace and the best thing ever to bring us graciously to this point of breaking. And again, a lot of blessing and a lot of brokenness all in the soup. But that's when I would say, for me personally, I began to say, okay, it's me. Chip, to your point a while ago, the breakthrough you want is inside. And I didn't want to hear that. Okay. So it's hard to hear that. Hey, what's wrong, man? Every indicator of our church is up and to the right. Baptisms, attendance, budgets, buildings, expansion, everything's up and to the right. And in the midst of some really good stuff God was doing, there was extreme brokenness behind the scenes. Our backstage life and what was going on was extremely messed up, and I didn't want to hear it until I had to hear it, and I had to face it, and then the healing had to be in me. The tip of the spear for everything God's done at our church sits right here. Like God started this journey with her, and now we walk in the wake of that, even as a church staff and body. Now, because of what God did in her and how God has opened me up. And now, therefore, us up in our church. This is now the way we're going to do life. This is the way we're going to lead. And it started changing. Now everything's changing, and it got real hard. It got worse before it got better. I'll tell you that. But we're 5 years into this journey. It's hard to believe, and I feel like for the first time, Chip, you and I were talking. Joe, we were talking. We haven't added any campuses because why would we want to multiply such extreme dysfunction and toxicity? Okay, 5 years now into the journey, I feel like we're probably on the starting line of saying, okay, maybe we do have something now that would be worth multiplying because it's real. The front stage and backstage life of our staff are incongruence. There's They're in congruence. There's integrity there. Not perfection. Please hear me, not perfection. But there's integration of soul health with the things that we're attempting to do in kingdom work.
Can you just briefly elaborate in what your elders meant when they said to you that your staff was in unacceptable condition?
When people would leave our staff, we would always celebrate, hey, God opened another door. They're going to go, serve their family. They're going to go do this or that. The truth was they were worn out. They were exhausted. They felt like they were not seen, not heard. They felt like they were being prodded all the time. And so what the elders came back to us after doing a very brief, short survey of some of our staff, they came back and said, look, the pace is unsustainable. We lead out of fear, not out of love. We are a high control, low empowerment leadership model, and we value policies over people. Okay. Other than that, you're great, right? but those four things become, and this, so if there's anybody out there, it can happen at any level. Okay. We were so caught up in the machinery of a really large church. And again, the shadow became, we were trying to build a brand, not be a church. And that's so crazy to look back on now, but I see it so clearly. That's inadvertently where we got to. But when you start doing that, you're working out of your flesh, not out of revelation in the spirit. You're driving people for result, not being sensitive to people and seeing them and loving them well. And we just got there to a place where our elders, again, they were a part of the soup too. We've all had to say, God, forgive us.
Yeah.
God, forgive us. And
I'll say one little thing. Can I mention all of that? Yes, all of that. So true. And one of the things as a creative person, just wired in a creative vein, like that's kind of I saw no one was able to use their creativity. Nobody was allowed to dream and to try to, live out the dreams and live out the calling, really, that God would, the visions that people would see. That was part of, I think, the control was it had to look so much like this, a certain way. Then the empowerment piece, and that was one thing that grieved me more than anything. As a creative, like any idea that was brought to the table, if it wasn't in alignment with what was already decided that it was going to look like, it was tossed out. And so, and I'm thinking, as I looked, back, God, creator, like the ultimate creator, that is created in his image. And if that is suppressed in a person's life, then that is a deep darkness that has come against a culture, and a team, a family, a person. And I feel that in a really deep way.
So decision making was so concentrated at such a small place at leader in the Pine Lake organization that everything under that was, you're just following the plan. You're just running the play. You're just following the playbook, but nobody could make a decision. Nobody could change it. And so again, it was a sick place to be for us and became very unhealthy. And I thank God for our elders who at least, were willing to say, this is not it and we got to fix it.
It's neat, the transformation that you guys have had and are having, how that affects culture and the people. I mean, I'm stating the obvious, but how impactful that is. And just a bizarre thought experiment. Just imagine if you guys never walked beyond we'll just pray for the depression and it'll go away. Oh, you're prideful? We'll just pray and that will go away. I mean, imagine if that's the theology you guys were working with, that all you have to do is pray and God will do it. There's no hard work to be done. I mean, you guys would be stuck back where you were.
Yeah, no doubt. And look,
Yeah.
we're for praying. And again,
For sure.
God can heal in a moment. He
I
can.
agree.
And if you're going to be true, and this is part of my wiring, if you're going to be honest with the text of the scripture, you have to acknowledge that there's a Greek word for healing, which is therapy. I mean, its
Right.
transliteration is therapy.
Right.
So if you don't have room for that, if you don't have room for 1 Peter 1:22, where it says, since you have in obedience to the truth purified your soul for a sincere, no pretending, no faking love of the brethren, fervently love one another from the heart. If you can't acknowledge that as part of a discipleship process, you're missing it. And you're going to
Yeah.
disciple people's heads, but you're going to miss their souls. And that's where
That's
I
right.
lived for a long time. But now
Yeah.
I and we want to have our heads and hearts discipled to Jesus, not to the culture, not to our parents, not to Southern Baptist or whatever your flavor may be. You're influenced by all of that, but I want to be discipled to what Jesus said. And that
Right.
is body, soul, and spirit. He is able to sanctify you entirely. Spirit,
Yeah,
soul,
baby.
and body is the way Paul says it in 1 Thessalonians 5:23. This is
Right.
grounded in the word,
Yeah.
and God uses people and resources to bring healing. It's called sanctification. It's what it
Yeah.
is. It's the sanctification process. My
Yeah.
soul was sanctified the moment I received Jesus. I have no doubt about that. My position in Christ is set. And my practicality of working out what Christ has done for me, the healing he has for me, takes time and work.
Yeah. It's all throughout scripture, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. We've taken the culture that we live in, the world, and laid it over scripture and interpreted scripture through our culture instead of the other way around. And I did want to remind anybody listening that we're going to do another episode. So if you're listening to this episode somewhere, probably the same place, you'll be able to get the next episode. And we're going to talk about how this has affected Chip and Christy's leadership, the culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I just want to say sidebar there. Whatever. I'm full of these one-liners. Picked it up from a book years ago. The culture of an organization. The culture of an organization is the behavior of its leaders. The culture of an organization is the behavior of its leaders. It's not what they say it is. It's not what they hope it is. It's not what they write out after a planning retreat. The culture is how they do life one day at a time, how they treat people, how they see themselves, and it's mostly sub or unconscious. Another phrase is this one: you teach what you know, you reproduce what you are. So what happens is if we fill our head with all the correct knowledge, let's say, but what comes out of us is all that unresolved, unfinished, unprocessed hurt and whatever, and we don't even see it because we feel at home when the outside matches the inside. Well, if I'm all jacked up on the inside, I'm not going to. It's not going to appear unusual or abnormal to me if the outside's all jacked up. So there's just so many, I mean, Chip, I'd love for you to chew on this one. Jeremiah 1:10. Set you over nations and kingdoms. And then he says this. Scripture says this: to root up, pluck up, pull down, destroy. Root up, pluck up, pull down, destroy. Build and plant. Root out, pluck up, pull down, destroy, build and plant. What does anybody notice immediately? 4 of the 6, two-thirds, are destructive. 1/3, 2 of the 6, is constructive. What am I saying? In Chip Judd's paradigm of reality, that's the perfect picture of spiritual growth. Spiritual growth is 2/3 getting rid of what's already there, 1/3 adding new stuff. Because if you don't change what's there, parable of the sower, the word's going to come, but it's going to be by the road, meaning you're not even aware enough to appreciate it. Number 2, it's going to hit rocks. What's rocks? Unprocessed pain. It's going to fall among thorns. What's that? That's the distractions. What you said earlier, Chip, that's learning to get a right need met the wrong way. So it's all through Scripture, man. It is all there. And I just believe God, I believe kind of all wrapped around this. I believe the Father's love, And what we're talking about right now is the key to the next move of God.
Yeah.
I think the world's going to want what we have when what we have is bringing us into a healthier place.
Yeah.
And I would say that heretofore, historically, our lives don't really look that much different.
Yeah, they don't. And Chip, I'll trust you on the math of the 2/3, and I would agree with that. I think in my mind, what I see is that you have to uproot, tear down, pluck up, and destroy, and then build better. Build from there. And I think what my upbringing and my culture is you just build on top of whatever's there, because that, as if that doesn't matter. What good's it going to do me to go back and look at the past, the past, and the past? It's not even affecting me now. We have a friend who likes to say the past isn't the past. It's not really the past. The past is the present. And when you bury pain, you bury it alive, those kinds of things. And I think for me, I was one of those guys that for a long time would go, what use is it to, my mom and dad ain't got nothing to do with me. What happened to me when I was 6 years old has nothing to do with me. And that's where I would say to God's point in Jeremiah, no, actually it has everything, because that's the framework, the strategy, the lies you've believed, the ways you're trying to get legitimate needs met in illegitimate ways. Until you go back and unearth that and pull that crap up by the root and get it out, it's just going to keep giving bad fruit no matter what. If grass can grow through the sidewalk, your bad past is going to come through no matter how much spiritual stuff you lay on top of it.
Right. Yeah.
Chip, I have been playing around with this verse. I know we got to wrap, so I'll make it quick. But this, and I think it's Jesus said it a few different ways in a parable, but I think it was basically finding a beautiful pearl and then selling everything you have and giving up everything you have just to have that pearl. To me, recently in my spiritual walk, that is so connected to mental health and peace of mind. It's basically, if we believe God's kingdom is here in the now, that we can take hold of it. That's what I want. I want peace of mind. I want good mental health. I want joy, and I'll give anything up and do whatever it takes to have that. And that's something that's been on my mind for this last week or two.
Yeah. Christy, let me ask you a question. I know we got to wind up. How tangibly in your daily life together, as Chip has begun to deal with his issues, how is he different? Like,
oh Lord,
yeah, I mean, so different. I think of a willingness to lean in. I think just even when he affirms who I am as a person, and the way I was designed and created, and the fact that I'm actually in partnership with him, in life. I feel brought in and loved. And I think that there is, the more compassion he's had for himself, learned to do that and seeing the compassion of God, then he has been he's a compassionate man now. And I feel that on a daily basis, really, and just seeing how the willingness that he has to step towards people. We're used to, it was just like, he didn't want to go there with people. He would be in a counseling session with another person and just was very, that would just drain him. And so now there is a true love that he has for me, for our family, and also for the people that he leads. So I see it, I see that in him.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yeah, man. Well, this has been really awesome.
Really has.
And appreciate the courage and really just commitment to the Lord that makes you want to share this. Chip, I don't know, and again, forgive me for the presumptuous of this statement, but do you realize how bad leaders need to hear what you guys are talking about?
Yes, I do actually, Chip. And once your eyes get open, you see it. And so, and I don't say that in a judgmental sense. I say it from a sense of saying, and Chip, I think they are aware of it in the depths of their heart, but they're afraid to address it, because what does that mean? Will they lose their job? You know? And thank God for our elders who had extreme grace and patience for me. Thank God.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, again, the whole church culture that we live in, outside of the Pine Lake culture, I'm saying the church, Big C church, the culture has to be, can we help people become real all the way to the core?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think pastors want it, but they don't know how to get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you said bad leaders, I think I would just use the word broken leaders, because, that one of the things that's been most healing for me, as far as like woundedness by the church or by people in the church, the most healing part for me was the forgiveness part. And I couldn't, I tried so hard to work through the emotion part of it, but the spirit, like the deepest spiritual part of healing for me was learning, like, to be able to forgive. And the way the Lord, like the place I can remember almost like where I was sitting, he said, see them as children and you'll understand why they have wounded you so deeply. It makes sense. And so to visualize the person as a man or a woman grown, just being whatever, is hard. That's hard to forgive. But to be able to look at them and see them as children in their own trauma or brokenness or woundedness, I can forgive that child.
Right.
And that is just that is who they are. And so that has been freeing for me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Chip and both of you, Chip and Christy, an outgrowth of my life and ministry for all these years is to just build a coalition of people that want to create the safety, the awareness, the skilled people to help. But the bottom line is to gradually, incrementally, or God just Shazam. I just believe this. We'll talk all the time about, organizations that rise to the level of the leader. Well, in the context of our conversation, that ought to scare the crap out of us. But what it also does is inspire vision. Like, what if God's putting together connections and people and little pockets all over the place to make it safer for a leader to say, there might be something wrong with me.
Yeah.
There might be work I need to do on me. And then, of course, we've got to have the people around that can actually help with that journey.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. I'm excited about the future, because I do believe leadership's critical. And your story is just another example of how the changes you allow God to do in you multiply in the lives of others. And 1 Timothy 4:16, meditate on these things, persevere in them. And here's the phrase I love: and your progress, not perfection, will be evident to all. And then he says this amazing statement, and it will ensure salvation, or one translation says guarantee salvation to those who hear you. And I felt like God said to me one time, to the degree you'll allow me to set you free, I can use you to set others free.
Yeah.
And gosh, what could happen as more and more leaders get set free?
Yeah. I agree.
Wow.
I agree.
Wow. Wind us up, Joey.
Well, I'll just say that the next episode that we will drop will get into more of the beautiful weeds of mental health and mission of the church, and what it looks like now doing ministry with this new understanding of having walked through what Christy and Chip have walked through, just having a brand new understanding. And it sounds like a replenished spirit. And honestly, sounds like brand new vision based on what you guys have learned and walked through. I'm excited to hear about that in the next episode.
Thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did being in that conversation. And in the show notes, we will have a link to Chip's YouTube channel, and we'll actually link part 2 directly if you want to catch up with Pastor Chip and Christy Henderson to hear how they're living life differently, living well, and it looks like they are going to be finishing strong. They're doing ministry totally different and have a healthier culture, healthier life, healthier relationship. It's a good part 2. Thank you guys for listening.